All right, continuing on with the TMCC Library Open Genealogy Lab Outstanding Guest Speaker Series, today we are pleased to present Glen Whorton. Glen has a long and impressive resume. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Nevada, a master's degree from the University of South Carolina, and was in the military from 1970 to 72. He has been employed as a U.S. Army police officer and worked in the Nevada prison system between 73 and 2005. During that time, he held several positions ranging from correctional officer, caseworker, to Associate Warden. He has several commissions, including the Nevada Criminal Justice Information System Advisory Committee, Nevada Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, and the Nevada State Council on Libraries and Literacy. In related activities, he was the contract hearing representative for the Nevada Board of Parole Commissioners, an ombudsman for the Nevada Attorney General's Office, and has been an instructor at both the Southern and Western Nevada Community College system. In today's presentation, Glen's going to speak about finding your incarcerated ancestors. With Ancestry and Newspapers.com, our family trees and an awareness of the history of our forebears has exploded. It is not unlikely that you have found those crazy great-great-uncle or obnoxious third cousins whose behavior has been so bad that they've been thrown into the Great Bar Hotel. I love that. Today, we're going to talk about how to find information on those distant or near relatives from prison and other government agencies. So don't be embarrassed. We all have them, and they'll just add spice to our family story. So I'd like to offer a warm virtual welcome to Glen.
Okay, thank you. You know, as you look at your family trees and as you grow your family trees, at some point, in all probability, you're going to find a black sheep, an individual who's been incarcerated in either Nevada or one of the other states of the Union. That's incarceration was not uncommon, and even though people were incarcerated, there was back in the day there was a much more liberal tolerance for deviance. You could be incarcerated in prison for a murder with a life sentence, and in 5 or 6 years, you'd be back out in the community. So there was, this media stuff about, hanging horse thieves and things like that. That was not reality. Executions were rare, and for the most part, they were judicially sanctioned. NSP, the Nevada State Prison, is interesting because when you start looking into its history, it's not the history of a prison, it's really the history of the state of Nevada. What you're going to find is that from a political standpoint, what you see there are the buildings, the site of the political origins of Nevada, the Warm Springs Hotel. During the territorial legislature, there was I guess the myth is that there was a disturbance and some damage to the hotel, and the owner of the hotel presented the legislature with a bill for the damages. They had no money, so they leased a portion of the property as a territorial prison and also a portion of the quarry that was on the property. So in reality, the prison was one, if not the first, but one of the very first actions taken by government in the state of Nevada. So kind of an indication of that. In 1864, when we became a state, the prison was the only state agency that was actually written into the Constitution. What you see there is actually the prison portion of the Warm Springs Hotel. You can see the hotel over here on the right-hand side that still functioned up until 1879, I believe. And that's got an interesting history all of its own. I actually started working on Ancestry about 12 years ago in preparation for my father-in-law's 100th birthday. And almost immediately, I found reference to one of my wife's great uncles who had been incarcerated on a federal charge at Terminal Island for violation of the Mann Act. I don't know if you guys know what that means, but you can always look it up. It's kind of interesting in itself. But typically what you're going to find, and I know you've all been on Ancestry, you're gonna find a page like this. This particular individual is Jack Rainsberger, and I ought to mention at this point that any references I make to inmates, these individuals are deceased, so there's no issue of libel or slander or influencing any action that might be taken against them. But this is what you find, and as you see it, it really doesn't say a whole lot about any criminal activities. You're going to find, um, just the basic family information. What is probably more useful is a subscription to newspapers.com. And I use this quite a bit, not only for my personal look for ancestors, but also for the history of the Nevada State Prison and the inmates and the staff that worked out there in the past. You can make a very broad search of a name and the state in which they may have been incarcerated. And that broad search would be also a very broad period of time on the date. Here you see Jack Rainsberger. Again, this is a continuation from the Ancestry. And if you look at this, there's 169 matches to Jack Rainsberger. And that's because he was an extremely notorious individual who was incarcerated in Nevada. He actually murdered a young woman in Las Vegas. And what you will find if you go into whether it's somebody like Jack, who's extremely notorious, or someone who's committed a much less serious crime like burglary or fraud or something like that, what you'll find is you can pick up the sequence of the arrest, the charging, the trial, and the sentencing. It's really hard to get any information about their incarceration from newspapers.com unless something significant occurs, like, well, for instance, in Nevada, inmates working in a quarry engaging in a fight using pickaxes, and one of them gets hit in the head. That kind of thing is going to show up in the local newspaper. And realistically, beyond Nevada, when you're looking in other states, you're probably have an opportunity to find even better information because of the quantity of small newspapers that are going to have an interest in their local criminals. When you look at incarceration, you'll be looking not only for inmates, but also staff that worked in these institutions. This particular news story is from August 31st, 1923, where it shows that the warden of the prison, a guy named Salter, was arrested for shooting blackbirds. And this is the kind of detail you're going to find in those local newspapers. He's somewhat notorious because the longest escape that occurred in the history of the United States with a recapture was a result of his failings as a warden. Quickly, the story is he had a convicted murderer who'd been in prison a very short time, who'd killed two sheriff's deputies in Ely. As his driver. He had the inmate drive him to Reno one Saturday night to a brothel. And while he went into the brothel, the inmate took off and was gone for 46 years. And his name was Leonard Fristow. For those of you that have been around Nevada for quite a while, you might remember when he was recaptured back in 1969. But Here's another example of a staff, in this particular instance, a guard by the name of, in 1874, by the name of Eugene Lightly, shot one of the other guards in the foot because he thought that this inmate Veneta had somehow interfered with some work that was being done on some of his clothes. Of course, the sheriff came out and immediately arrested him. But another interesting thing about this is, in one day prior to this article, was another article in the Carson Appeal indicating that Veneta had been hit in the head by and assaulted by an inmate. So if you're related to Mr. Veneta, he had kind of a tough time out there. Another good source of information about your criminal ancestors is going to be from court records. Uh, you're going to find things from the county clerk. You're going to find appeals for people who had very serious offenses, and those appeals are going to go not just to Nevada Supreme Court, but U.S. District Court up in Reno, or when it was here in Carson City, or the U.S. Supreme Court. And you're going to be able to find a lot of those references online. It used to, if you were an attorney, you had to have this wall of law books, but now all that stuff is pretty much digitized, and you can actually find quite a bit. If you look at those appeals or some of those judgments, you'll actually find that they'll provide circumstances of the offense that occurred, and that can be helpful. You can also go down to the state law library. They're going to have information that's more directed to cases from Nevada, things that didn't rise to the level of U.S. District Court and beyond. So that's going to be a good resource. This is an example of some of the things you find. This is just the front page of an appeal that was filed by Jack Rainsberger again, and all of these appeals are, when an inmate has to appeal a sentence or a judgment, they have to appeal it to the warden. In this particular instance, Rainsberger is appealing the death sentence that he was given back in 1959. Another source of information can be a Department of Corrections. You can call a Department of Corrections, Department of Prisons in Nevada or any of the other states. However, don't bother trying to go there. They're not going to let you in. Their records are protected. They're very careful with them, and they're very careful with what kinds of information they're going to give you. You can go online on most jurisdictions at this point, and they're going to have an inmate search. And that search will tell you, give you the inmate's name if they're currently incarcerated or recently released on parole, their name, their offense, the county they were committed from, and it'll give you some direction, but that is about it. They're not going to give you dates of birth and whatnot. They'll also give you an institutional location. Now, you're going through your tree and you discover a second or third cousin or whatnot who's currently incarcerated. Don't contact these individuals. Getting hold of an inmate is filled with risk and drama. What inmates typically try to do, you have to understand that they are very good practicing psychologists, and they will attempt to manipulate you. Typically, they'll start by saying, giving you their poor me story, and try to engage you on some level where you have some common interest or common characteristics. They'll tell you that you're the only ones that understand them, and ultimately what they're going to do is they're going to try to get money. They're going to tell you that they have debts and other inmates are going to kill them if they're paid. They're going to tell you that they have to buy their clothes. They're going to have to tell you that before they can get a parole, they have to pay a fee. None of that stuff is true. So you need to understand that you can write to these individuals and whatnot, but I would not bother doing it. Essentially, what a lot of these inmates will do is they will try to sell you to other inmates. And what that means is they will turn over your information to another inmate for a pack of cigarettes or Little Debbie's or something, and these individuals try to work you for money or whatever else they can get from you. Now, this is what you're going. This is a prison record. This is a file of Jack Rainsberger. Jack is dead. He died in 2012, and you can see here that the progression of his offenses from death to life without to life with, as he went to his death penalty is overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court when they got rid of death penalties. Pardons Board changed it to life without the possibility of parole, and then they again changed it to life with the possibility of parole. We use him as an example in our museum at the Nevada State Prison. Yes, he holds the record for the number of parole board appearances. It took him 20 attempts in order to get a parole, and by the time he was released, he was rolled out of the prison in a wheelchair. There are no regular files. If you go to state archives, there are no regular files that they have for all the inmates. The only time a file was created for an inmate prior to about 1907 was when they made an application to the Pardons Board. Pardons Board was the governor, attorney general, and secretary of state. And even at that, there's not a lot of information in those files. You're not going to find a lot of specifics about their offense, about their background, where they live, their employment, anything like that. Mostly, those files are focused on things that have occurred inside the prison. And in reality, the State Archives only has about 300 files for Pete prior to 1907. Their archive policies for the Department of Corrections is that they retain a file for 7 years after the final discharge of an inmate. And at that point, and this is a new policy, the Department of Corrections purges that file and then they transmit it to state archives. When they purge that file, there is not a lot left. All you're going to find in there is a judgment of conviction and parole board papers. Either you won't find the parole board reports, you'll find just the actions where they've been denied or they've been granted parole. So it's not really worth it to spend a lot of time with the Nevada Department of Corrections. I suspect that the same is true for states other than Nevada. They're very careful about what inmate goes out, considering privacy issues. They do have a list at state archives that they update periodically that provide the names of the inmates' files that they have. And you can call them up and ask them to look up a relative, and you would do that by name. It's helpful if you have a general date that they were in, but you have to have something in order to get there. Also, even though the prison way back in the 1800s didn't have files, they had to have something that documented what an inmate, what he did. And who he was. And this, in Nevada's case, they had what they called orange cards. And this is an example of an orange card, a guy by the name of Darling. And this, he was received at the prison in 1866 and was pardoned in 1871. And you see here just a bit of a description of his history in the department. They've got his basic information. They also, on the backside of it, would have some of the identifying information. typewriters came into kind of general use back in the 1880s. So any cards that they have, for instance, like this one, were based upon some type of material that the prison had that was copied over and put on the orange cards. Um, so these are not public. You cannot get access to these. These are actually held in a vault at the Nevada Department of Corrections. However, our organization, the Nevada State Prison Preservation Society, has been given access to those cards, and we are in the process of developing a project to scan every single one of those cards so that they can be retrievable, and they would be available to genealogy researchers from us, but not the Department of Corrections. Before that happens, if you are truly interested, you have some, and I'd say not for people like second cousins, stuff like that, but if you have a direct ancestor, a grandfather, or even a grandmother who might have been incarcerated in Nevada, you can actually get a hold of us, and we can go make a search of those orange cards for you. You'd be able to actually, you can contact us through our website, and that is nevadastateprison.org. All one word, all lowercase. It's another example of a orange card. This one is really interesting. It kind of shows you how poorly managed the Nevada State Prison was back in the day. If you look here, the very first entry under under the criminal record on May 1st, this guy actually escaped, and they didn't catch him until the 8th of May. You go on down here to September 17th, 1871. It says escaped in break. What that was it's allegedly the largest prison escape that has ever occurred in U.S. history. Now, I think that's hyperbole. Frankly, if you go back to the Civil War, there's an instance where 105 Union soldiers who were POWs escaped from the Libby prison there in Virginia. So, maybe if you qualify this to criminal escapes and stuff like that, maybe that's true, but I would take that with a grain of salt. But essentially, this particular instance was really interesting. I've got an individual coming out to actually work on a film about the escape route that these individuals took. 29 of them escaped from the prison. The warden had his skull fractured and was shot in the back. 3 people were shot by the inmates at the front of the prison. They killed a Pony Express rider. It was a mess, and it resulted in some significant changes in the way the prison was managed. And the next kind of change that you see in records, and this can be really interesting if you're looking for an ancestor after say 1900. In Nevada, in 1907, there was a lot of labor problems in Goldfield, Nevada. Goldfield was just booming, largest community in the state. And a lot of interesting people there. They had major heavyweight fights. The Earp brothers were employed there as deputies and constables, and the industrial workers of the world. I don't know how many of you had a lot of detailed American history, but they were the well, they were alleged to be kind of the precursors of the Communist Party in this country. They were called the Wobblies, and they were engaged in a lot of labor actions against the mines and the mine operators, and some of the businesses there in Goldfield. The really dramatic one was when there was a picketing against a restaurant where the owner refused to pay his staff, and he was so angry with that he rushed out of his restaurant with a pistol, took aim at this young man, Maury Preston, and before he could shoot him, Maury drew his own pistol and killed him. Instead of being self-defense, the local law enforcement people and the mine owners and politicians got together and charged him with murder. In fact, Governor Sparks, who's known to plume was Honest John, and he wasn't honest at all. And George Wingfield hired a bunch of ex-cons and criminals to perjure themselves in court and get Maury convicted of murder. They also convicted an accomplice of Maury's, a guy by the name of Joe Smith, and he was convicted as an accessory, even though he was home having dinner at the time of the incident. Interestingly, Maury was nominated for president of the United States. He's the only individual from Nevada to ever be nominated for president. He was nominated by the American Socialist Party in 1908. He declined the nomination, number one, because he was too young. He wasn't 35. And number two, he did not want to annoy the Pardons Board. So he ultimately got out after serving about 12 years. He moved to Southern California, got a job as a power and telephone lineman, and fell off a pole and died. He was ultimately pardoned by the Pardons Board in 1907, him and Joseph Smith. Let me go back there just a second. What's interesting about this is about the time that mugshots start showing up in inmate files, start being used for identification. As part of those labor problems in 1907, after the incident with Maury Preston, Governor Sparks appealed to Teddy Roosevelt, the president, to send federal troops to Goldfield. And he did send a battalion of soldiers from Southern California to Goldfield. And they got there, they camped on the outskirts of town. They looked at the situation and they communicated back to DC that this was all bogus, that there was no need for federal troops. There wasn't all this stuff going on. So Teddy Roosevelt, being annoyed, he pulled them all out. When the politicians still wanted some way to control the labor movement. So at that point, they created the state police, and they were headquartered at the prison here. And the warden was actually also the head of the state police. And at that point, is when they basically started the Identification Bureau, which was fingerprints and mugshots. This is State Archives. They're over on 100 North Stewart Street. I have to tell you, if you go over there, and I know Sue can probably back this up, if you go over there, it's very quiet. You go upstairs to the archives, and as you walk in there, what you will find is that you're the only one there, except for an individual sitting at a desk. Very few people go there, and I'll tell you, the staff there are so happy to see you. They are extremely helpful. They are a great resource. They'll go out of their way to help you find a document or something that will help you in the development of your genealogy. There are some rules, and first is they require you to fill out a form as a researcher that has to be renewed annually, and that's no big deal. It's a very simple form, and they don't really put any limitations on you. They have logical rules like no food, drink, that you can only use pencils in there, and you can take photographs, but you cannot use flash photography. Photograph generally, I have never had a staff member tell me that I can't take a photograph of a document. One of the other things they have here, besides inmate files, is They have logbooks. There are two logbooks, very old, going back into the 1800s. They indicate the name, the offense, the origin of individual inmates. They're a couple of remarkable books, and they will let you look at those, and you can go in there and get the very basic information on your ancestor and also take a picture of it. We have a question.
No, I think that was just somebody logging back in.
Oh, I gotcha. One of the things you're really going to want to look for, both in Nevada and other states, and I don't know what the policy is in other states, but I know in Nevada, they are very reluctant to retain a pre-sentence investigation in one of these old files. But if there is one in there, they are, as I've said here, they are genealogy gold. And again, this is my example, Jack Rainsberger. And this is he actually escaped from the prison. Let's see, when was it? Says the offense date. It was 77, I think, was the actual incident date. But it's got everything in it. It's got a statement of the offense, and this will be a detailed statement. Things that you don't necessarily find in newspapers. It will provide a summary of his criminal history. It won't show a lot of misdemeanor kinds of offenses, but if you've been incarcerated previously on felonies, obviously that kind of thing will be in there. It will talk about his family, where he grew up, how he grew up, any family issues that may have affected his development. They'll also go over employment, what they've done, the length of employment, reasons for termination, all of those kinds of things. Substance abuse, drugs and alcohol, almost invariably, you're going to find drugs or alcohol are have a direct impact on the offense that brought them there or on their behavior generally that caused them to adopt a criminal lifestyle. Education, same thing, past residences and marriages. When you get into things like the family and the marriages, these are the kinds of things that make organizations reluctant to make this public. But if it's there, and in this particular case, looking at Jack Rainsberger's file, it is there. So I managed to photograph, get copies of that, and that will be in our museum. Another example of things you find in the file are going back into the early 1900s. There was no Department of Parole and Probation, and inmates who were paroled had to write monthly reports, letters to the secretary of the governor. And this is an example of one of those, written in 1939 by an inmate by the name of Huey Singh. Now, Huey's a little bit important because he was the crime partner of a guy by the name of G. John. G. John committed a murder in rural Nevada. He was a member of a San Francisco Chinese tong, and there was kind of a tong war going on. So he murdered the proprietor of a Chinese laundry. He was given the death penalty. In fact, he was the first individual executed in the world by gas. Understanding that gas was used as a weapon in World War I, this was the first directed execution of gas. And Huey was his crime partner, lived here in Carson City, and kind of hooked up with G. But he was pardoned. He got the death penalty. He was pardoned to life with the possibility of parole, and basically due to his age. He was just 18 years old at the time of the offense. But as you go through the files, you'll find these, and they can be really interesting because they'll talk about where they're living, what they're doing, their illnesses, all those kinds of things. One of the other things that are rare but are great to find are a federal rap sheet, and this will be the detail of a criminal record. Again, this is Jack Rainsberger, and you see that Jack is, he had some problems before he ever came to the state of Nevada. This particular one in Segoville, Texas, down there towards the middle, he escaped. He stole a bicycle and he rode 25 miles before he was captured. So he was a bad guy for a long time, despite the fact that he thought himself to be quite the intellectual and essentially smarter than anybody else he might come in contact with. I mentioned earlier that in these files you will find parole actions, and this is an action where Jack was denied in 1977, and he was given a 1-year denial, 77 to 78. Those are common in those files. And this is kind of an example logbook. This is not it. I got a full disclosure here. This is not the logbook. I just don't have a picture of those. If you go to state archives, prison files are not the only thing they have there. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here. My mother-in-law was an orphan from Tonopah, and she came to Carson City to the orphans home with her siblings, and they have logbooks there, just like we had at the prison where she was logged in. So if you have an ancestor that was an orphan, you can also perhaps go to archives and they can help you find that. You might also make a phone call before you go, because again, they're kind of just there. This is difficult. In Nevada's case, the prison actually had their own graveyards. They have 2 graveyards on the property. They have one literally up on a rise overlooking the old Nevada State Prison, a boot hill, if you will. And there's about 15, 16 graves up there. And they have a larger one that's off the bluff, and it actually inside the Warm Springs prison. They built a prison on the property, and the whole thing's surrounded by a fence now. So it's not really accessible. However, we have been able to find a blueprint of the big cemetery. And it's actually kind of interesting. You see here the headstone, John Hancock. He was the first individual executed at the Nevada State Prison, executed by hanging for the murder of 2 individuals in central Nevada. He had prior incarceration in San Quentin. If you look at this particular plot plan down here in the lower left-hand corner, all by himself, that's G. John. So he was the first individual executed by gas. So, again, you can look and see if the prison that you're interested in had a cemetery, because it's not uncommon for families not to claim a body. And this was prior to obviously the use of cremation. The interesting part about this newer cemetery on the flat ground there inside Warm Springs, when the prison started using it for a cemetery, what they didn't know is that it wasn't owned by the state. It was owned by a rancher, and at some point they had to purchase that property in order to rectify their problem there. You can check with every state has a state funeral and cemetery board. And a lot of times they can tell you if there is a prison cemetery or any cemetery. And given the resources, they may or may not be able to tell you exactly where an ancestor is buried. This is John Hancock, the guy whose tombstone we had there. I just thought I'd show that up. We don't actually have a mugshot from him. As you can imagine, when executions were held back in the very early 1900s, the files on these guys were not large. This is 1905, prior to the to the real implementation of mugshots. This is a mugshot from San Quentin on a previous incarceration that we were able to find. Just throwing that in there. This is an example of kind of showing you how they documented some of this. Indicates that that Miles here died and he was buried 600 yards south of the prison. So that would have been the new graveyard. So that's pretty much it about what I'd have for you. So if you want to turn it over to questions, I'm certainly open to that.
Okay, I'll open it up to the class. And while I wait for some questions to come in, I do have a question. I don't think maybe I just missed it, but did you say these cards are not currently, the orange cards are not currently available, but you're in the process of trying to get permission to digitize them?
No, we have the permission to digitize them. It's just there's thousands of them, and they're, like I say, they're tucked away in a vault. So it's kind of difficult to get to and to get it done. But that's probably a project that we're going to work on this winter.
Oh, okay. If
We're
you
busy with our.
If you need a partner on that, I know the Nevada State Genealogical Society is looking to partner with people. So if that's something you'd like to partner up with volunteers from the society, please let me know.
I'll do that. I'll be in touch.
Yes, absolutely, because we've been looking for projects.
Excellent. You know, that's a really interesting project. The difficult thing is, and a lot of these cards is not to stop and want to read them.
Do you have access to a high-speed scanner? Because if you don't, here at the school we have 2 of them.
No, we actually have a scanner.
Okay.
We've got a high capacity scanner that'll just shoot them through.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'm excited about that. I think that's a project that you and I can work on.
Great.
Okay. Now, you mentioned mugshots. Are the mugshots? I know you said that the one you showed was from a different prison for the same person. That was on the orange card here in Nevada. But where are the mugshots stored?
The mugshots, if there's a mugshot, it'll be in the files, and it'll contain most of them. They have the mugshot printed, and they will also have the negative. Not that that would be particularly useful to you, but again, they're there. You pull them out, take a photograph of them. They don't care. And of course, those are interesting. The other thing is on the back of the mugshot, they will have some basic identifiers, offenses, and stuff, and that can be useful as well.
Now, the one that you said that was the genealogical gold mine, the one piece of paper, where is that, where that file, that was, that one right there. Yeah, that one.
That's a pre-sentence investigation. And starting in, they didn't actually create a Department of Parole and Probation until 1945 in this state. And it wasn't really developed until the 1960s. And that was when they started hiring individual administrators who had experience working in corrections in the state of California. And at that time, they started using actually our file systems and like this pre-sentence investigation, parole and probation. They're pretty much representative of California's practice in the 60s and 70s, because that's where our administrators came from. People like Carl Hawker, who was our first professional warden, was retired yard captain from San Quentin. His deputy was a guy by the name of Ed Pogue, who was a caseworker over there and had a lot of influence on the records keeping and processes. So from the late 60s, they started doing these pre-sentence investigations. This is a common practice throughout the entire United States. When you hear that an individual has been found guilty and then he's going to be sentenced a month or 2 months at some point following, one of the reasons for that is for a Department of Probation and Parole to complete a pre-sentence investigation. In this particular case, they're going to put all that information in that I talked to that's there on the screen, but they're also going to allow the inmate an opportunity to present his version of the offense, and they're also going to have a victim statement in there as well. So they're very complete, and this is actually written for the use of the judge. But when an individual is convicted in this state, and certainly in other states, this document is transmitted to the Department of Corrections for use by the classification staff. The classification staff decide where the inmate's going to go, what they're going to do, what their custody level is, those kinds of things.
If you don't mind, go back to the orange card, the first orange card that you showed us.
The first one?
Yeah, the first one. Yeah, right there. Yeah, that one right there. Now it mentions like fighting with Richards. Do we assume Richards is an employee or is Richards a fellow inmate?
That would be another inmate. Richards, you see one down there. He was also fighting with Hazelwood. He had a hard time getting along. This particular card is the oldest one we've been able to find, and this one dates from the prisoner from 1866. So, they actually go quite a ways back. And this one gives his age, his race, his employment was blacksmith. You see a lot of Asian. Chinese in particular, who were incarcerated, most of them for selling liquor to the Indians, those kinds of things. Nevada State Prison was also a contract location for federal crimes as well. So they had a lot of federal prisoners there, but from an identification standpoint, they were just like a Nevada prisoner. They even have an orange card and whatnot. Even though they'd be convicted of a federal offense, they were incarcerated in a state prison.
This is so interesting. For those of you who live here in the Northern Nevada area, if you've not taken a tour yet of the prison, the old prison, it is so worth it. My husband and I just went there. I think it was like 3-4 weeks ago. We took the tour for the first time, and it was an incredible experience. I learned so much, and it's a fascinating subject, and it's a fascinating history of the prison itself. Did you want to talk about how to book a tour?
How to what?
Book a tour of the prison?
We conduct tours of the prison. Again, you go on our website, nevadastateprison.org, and you can purchase tickets there. They're pretty much sold out through this month and August. You might still find some vacancies in September and October, but we're limited in terms of our tour guides and the number of people we can go through there, and we sell out every single ticket. So if you're interested in doing that, you might want to just look at September and October to see if there's anything left. We charge $20 per individual to go through there. All of that money, every single cent, goes to the preservation of the prison. We were organized in 2012 to make sure that the prison didn't go to the way to the V&T railroad shops. We did not want the buildings to become a decorative wall at a winery in California. Again, there's too much history there. We've taken obviously the professionals through, and the head of the state museum, his comment was, this isn't the history of Nevada or history of the prison, it's the history of the state. And that's exactly true when you look at the fact that, two of our wardens actually served as the governor of the state. So, back in the day, it's not like it is today. Back in the day, working at the prison was a big deal. Being the warden of the prison was a big deal. At one point, the warden was elected by the legislature. There was a proposal to have the warden elected at the general election, just like the governor or lieutenant governor or Attorney General. So it was a very political appointment and considered to be quite the plum. If because it was so political, the nepotism was rampant. A new warden would come in, he'd fire all the staff and hire his sons, his brothers, his hunting buddies. And one of the interesting things about Nevada State Prison, because these people were not professional, is some of the goofy things that happen out there. I mean, they're really strange. I showed that one or a couple of them where the warden is arrested for shooting blackbirds, and he has inmates driving him to a brothel. We got uh, one guard shooting another. And that's just part of it. There's I do a newsletter, and every month I go through the newspapers from the state and pull out an interesting story about the prison, and it can be anything from uh, thousands of frogs falling out of the sky to uh, an ex-felon breaking into the prison. I mean, it was just so strange and so bizarre. And until we get to the late 1960s, we had our own casino, the only one in the country. And uh, that's a whole story in itself. It's kind of indicative of the skill of our wardens, guys who were, they were attorneys, they were car dealers, farmers, ranchers, um, men about town. I mean, one of them, Raymond Baker, was the younger brother of the Attorney General. That's how he got to be warden. He also became the executive secretary for the ambassador in Russia during about the period of the Russian Revolution. Married into the Dodge family and the Vanderbilt family. So these were really interesting people, but weren't very good at their jobs.
That's one of the things you really learn when you take the tour. My husband and I just got such a good chuckle over the fact that the inmates actually had a casino in the prison. That was
Yeah.
pretty funny.
Yeah. So we're always looking for members. If anybody gets interested and wants to join us, we're always looking for people to train up as guides. If you don't want to be a tour guide, you can always be a what we call a sweep individual. Kind of keeps everybody together, make sure we don't lose anyone in the prison, or they stick their hands in a cell door and have an accident. So there's all kinds of ways to participate. Um, at this point, I work on the history in the museum, and I need to catalog all the articles that we've acquired that people have donated, so that we can, have some legitimacy as a museum and not just somebody's closet.
And that might be a project for the local DAR and the local SAR. I know that when I was there taking the tour 3-4 weeks ago, whatever it was, one of my fellow DAR members for my Battleborn Daughters of the American Revolution chapter was there volunteering. I was surprised when we walked into the prison, we saw her there at the front booth as a volunteer. And she mentioned that it's a great way to get your service hours in if you do belong to an organization that, requests that you do volunteer time and record it.
One of the things that's one way of doing it. We have also engaged with the courts and have had people who have been required by the courts to do community service. We've had them out there working on the property as well. So I guess the criminality continues. There are no inmates there. We do welcome ex-felons. We have no prejudice against that. They have a perspective that we would like to present. So,
Well, this is fascinating. I know during the tour they mentioned how many people had been executed. That was part of the tour where you actually go into the execution room. How many offhand? I don't remember. How many people have been executed there?
54 on the property. But that, again, that did not commence until 1905. There were executions that were carried out prior to that when it was responsibility of sheriff in the counties where the crime occurred.
Yeah, one of the funny stories that they told when we were there is that when they first started doing the executions, they had like an exhaust pipe to make it, to make the fumes go away. And it was right by the guard station, made the guards sick.
Yeah, they used to evacuate that two tower when they had an execution because they'd exhaust the gas through the roof, and the prevailing winds carried the gas towards the thing. We had window. Yeah, I did a presentation out at the Dangberg Ranch where one woman insisted that they also had to abandon the warden's residence there, and actually, uh, two daughters of the last warden who lived in the warden's house were there, and they said that's not true. So, we do have people that have experience out there, not just, I worked there for 3.5 years as a guard and as a caseworker. We've got other individuals that have worked there in various positions, and there are people in the community who have ties to the prison. Um, what I always tell people when I take them on a tour is that the prison was so integrated into the community of Carson City that you either knew someone who worked at the prison, you were related to someone that worked at the prison, you worked at the prison, or you were in prison. And that's exactly true. Um, I mean, my mother-in-law, when she was a young woman back in the 1940s, her foster father was the prison doctor, and she was taken. He took her along to a gas execution there, and she was unimpressed with that, as you can imagine. But that's just kind of typical of how important the prison was to the Carson City community.
Gosh.
It's not like today. Kids don't grow up today going, I think I want to grow up to be a prison guard. I mean, that's not the way it is. It's a different kind of business.
Wow. Yeah, well, you can definitely tell, when you go through the old prison tour that it's definitely a different time and, different reality. But still, it's a very interesting piece of local history, no doubt.
Uh, yep.
Okay, well, I'll open it up to the floor once again to the class. Anyone have any questions for Glenn?
I have a question. Um, Nevada is notorious for hauntings. Are there any reports of hauntings at the prison?
I tell you, probably our most intense activity out there at the prison is carried on by our paranormal section. They conduct ghost walks and investigations. Again, you can look on our website and see what they do. And I guess you got to be sensitive to that. And I'm not that sensitive, but we've had multiple media production companies come out there and film. The most obvious one being Ghost Adventures. They came out and did a segment at the prison, and there are people that they. I got to tell you, one of our former officers, he's very down to earth, kind of an old school guy, and he volunteered to help on a paranormal investigation one night. And the next thing you know, he is engaged. I mean, he's going, there's something to this, and there's something out there. So I don't know, but there's a that's probably the most active component of our organization is the paranormal section.
Yeah, do you get, I know this is kind of a silly question, but do you get bats out there at night? That's why I didn't want to take the night tour. My husband actually wanted to take the night tour, and I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't want to. I don't. I know there's a lot of bats down there by the creek, not too far from the prison."
Well, it's kind of weird. I've been out there in the dark, both when it was being used and after. Actually, I closed up the prison after the Ghost Adventures people quit filming, And it's weird. You walk out there in that yard with that old cell house looking at you, and it's like thousands of eyes are on you. And it's just kind of creepy. But that the other thing about NSP is it's it's extremely visual, and the Hollywood people like it a lot. We've had 9 movies filmed out there, the most recent one being The Mustang, and you can find that on Netflix. An Innocent Man with Tom Selleck was filmed out there. So it looks like what people think a prison should look like. It's extremely dramatic. Probably the most dramatic moment on a tour of the prison is when you walk out from the administrative building onto the yard and you see that cell house and whatnot, looming over you. It's pretty dramatic.
Yeah, I'd like to encourage everybody who lives here locally, to get tickets if you can and take the tour. It is so worth it. My husband still talks about it to this day, the people who have not taken the tour, and it supports a really good cause of preserving the prison. So a very worthwhile cause. Okay, any other questions for the class? Give it a few seconds here. Okay, well, Glenn, it looks like everyone's questions have been answered. So thank you very much for an excellent presentation. I learned even more today than I learned on the tour. So I really feel that, I've really been exposed to some really great information here to help people with their local ancestors from Nevada, and in particular, those who have been incarcerated. And I do plan on actually visiting the archives next week. So I will definitely maybe delve into this subject a little bit deeper when I get there.
Well, I'll be in touch, and like I indicated, I promised you that list of other topics. So I'll be talking to you.
Excellent. Okay. Well, then I will go ahead and stop the recording, and I will thank you for a wonderful presentation. And I'm going to invite the entire class to stay if you'd like. And if you do plan on leaving at this point in time, all you have to do is click the red end button. But if there's anything in the chat box you want before you log out, please don't forget to download the chat box, because if you forget and then log back in, the chat box will be empty. So please grab anything you want to need out of there now, and I'll invite everyone to stay. And thank you once again, Glenn. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.